in which you appear today.
Good afternoon, Nick Colley, Chief Operating Officer, QantasLink.
Thank you to you both. You have the opportunity to make a brief opening statement if you like. Would you like to take that opportunity?
Yes,
okay,
I may. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Deputy Chair and Senators. Thank you for your invitation to contribute to the Committee's inquiry into the state of Australia's aviation sector and its ability to deliver reliable and affordable services to rural, regional and remote communities. Qantas looks forward to assisting the Committee in its understanding of our recent QantasLink-based changes, as well as the challenges facing regional aviation in Australia. As the national carrier and the country's largest regional airline, Qantas has a deep-rooted and enduring commitment to regional Australia, operating 102 routes to 62 towns and regional centres across our country. This footprint sees us support tens and thousands of jobs in regional Australia and plays a significant social role, one that we take very seriously. On any given day, Qantas has more than 100 aircraft dedicated to our regional operations. These are deployed over 3,500 flights a week, carrying more than 9 million customers that fly with us to and from regional and remote parts of the country every year. And we are investing in our regional operations. Last year, we announced a major investment in our regional turboprop fleet with the acquisition of 14 midlife Q400 aircraft and the retirement of our older Q200 and Q300 fleet. We're also investing in Embraer E190s to replace our Fokker F100s, as well as 29 state-of-the-art Airbus A220 aircraft. All of these aircraft offer improved customer experience on the routes that they fly and operate more efficiently than the fleet they replace. Together, they represent hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in our regional fleet and are part of the biggest refleet in Australian history. The Group's direct investment in regional Australia goes further, with more than $1 billion spent every year with regional suppliers, including winemakers, farmers and food producers. We've also invested in pioneering projects that support regional aviation, such as the Qantas Group Pilot Academy in Toowoomba, and we've supported more than 120 not-for-profit groups and projects with $7 million granted through the Qantas Regional Grants Program. While our regional footprint is vast and our investment pipeline is strong, regional services continue to be commercially challenging, and there are some fundamental realities about the cost of operating regional air services. The cost of regional operations on a per-seat basis is significantly higher than mainline domestic and international operations. On a cost-per-seat kilometre basis, the turboprop fleet is 130% more expensive to operate than our domestic 737s and 230% more expensive to operate than our international wide-body operations. Noting the shorter distances, there are a number of external factors that drive these higher costs, such as regional airport fees, which have increased 30% since COVID, as well as more expensive security, fuel and engineering and maintenance charges. Regional carriers have to spread these high route costs across a smaller number of passengers compared to bigger city markets. And this is not unique to Australia. In the past month, Air New Zealand has flagged significant challenges in their regional business, citing many of their regional routes as sub-economic. And 2 regional airlines in the United Kingdom have ceased operations in the last couple of months. These contemporary examples, together with those here in Australia, highlight the importance of constantly reviewing our business to ensure it's set up for success to serve regional Australia. This includes the recent base changes. On the 1st of October, QantasLink announced its decision to move pilot and cabin crew bases from Hobart, Canberra and Mildura and consolidate these roles into Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne from April next year. This decision followed an extensive review which determined that consolidating crew from these smaller bases to our major bases will strengthen the resilience of the QantasLink network, improve reliability for customers, and better position our airline to grow frequencies across regional Australia. This decision is not about cost savings nor profitability. It's about improving reliability and setting us up for success as we embark on a significant period of fleet renewal. Importantly, this decision will not result in any reduction in flights or impact reliability to and from these cities. Following consultation and to reduce the impact of what is a significant decision for the 71 people affected, we have put in place a comprehensive support package for our pilots and cabin crew to allow them to continue residing in Hobart, Canberra or Mildura should they wish. This includes provisions for flights and other allowances, as well as roster support so they can commute to work, like many of our people in the Qantas Group do already today. In fact, about 10% of our people live in a different city to where they work. Our aim is to retain all of our pilots and cabin crew, and we are working with them on their individual circumstances. In closing, I would add that this month marks 105 years since Qantas was founded in outback Australia. And while at times we need to make tough decisions to ensure the sustainability of our operations, we are as committed as ever to investing in the future of regional Australia. I look forward to assisting the committee and happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much for your evidence. Can I just start? So, just to clarify, it's 70 affected pilots and crew, is that right?
71.
71.
Chair,
Thank you. How many people do QantasLink employ?
We employ about 3,500.
Okay. And how does this work within the group? These people, the pilots and flight crew, now going to be based in the major centres. Are they available to work on a Qantas plane as well? Or they just work on QantasLink?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So, no, our Qantas, these crew who are impacted, they work on our A220 operation. Most of those are working on the A220. 9 of them were working on our Q400 turboprop operation.
But I suppose I'm going to where this issue about reliability, if there's an issue, someone's called in sick, a flight attendant's called in sick that was going to go Brisbane-Sydney, could one of these 71 be switched onto that if they're available? Or they stay in the QantasLink group? No,
they only operate in the QantasLink network. And as I said, they will, if they're operating our A220, they only work on the A220 network. If they're a Q400, they only work on the Q400 network. Okay,
so it's 71 of 3 to 3,500. You've claimed that this will improve reliability. I'm struggling to see how that would make a material difference.
Yeah.
That's such a small proportion of your overall staff.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe it's important that I explain the review process that we went through. So as I mentioned in my opening address, we are undertaking a very significant fleet renewal program, in particular with our A220. We currently have 9 of those aircraft and we have another 20 to come over the next 2 years. As we look forward, we need to recruit almost another 150 or so pilots and close to 350 more cabin crew. And we want to make sure that as we're recruiting, we're setting those bases up for success for where our schedule and network will be based. So what we do is we look forward at our network and our schedule, and what we do is build what's called pairings. Pairings are basically a string of routes that ultimately sit on a crew member's roster. And when you do that, we've got a number of optimiser tools that take these schedules and networks, and then they look at all of the things around the flight rules, limits, roster rules, fatigue rules for our cabin and tech crew, and they determine how to create these patterns. 85% to 90% of those patterns will be based or originating out of those major cities of Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. So it's not that the flight where it originates first time in the day, because actually many of our crew overnight in regional ports today and come back, but their pattern or pairing is starting somewhere in those major bases at some point.
So given you've got those tools, that level of detailed analysis, how many flights will no longer be delayed or cancelled, or what proportion of flights, however you want to express it, would not be delayed or cancelled because of your decision to centralise those 71 roles?
We know that this will definitely strengthen the resilience
it's a quantitative question, so do you have an answer? I mean, you can take it on notice, but do you have a number? Presumably you've done all this analysis. I would be surprised if you didn't have a number for how many flights, what proportion will be no longer delayed or cancelled because of this decision.
Yes, I understand, Chair. I think it is important to say that on-time performance and cancellations, there's a range of different reasons which drive those. But what we know...
You've done this analysis.
Yes.
You've said publicly that the reason you've decided to consolidate, and there's obviously a cost of the consolidation, you're paying a fair amount of transitional assistance. The benefit of it, primarily that you've identified, is that it'll lead to fewer cancellations and delays. I'm trying to ask, presumably in a good business, you would have taken to the board or whoever was the decision maker, okay, these are the benefits of spending this money. I'm trying to ask the quantitative. I don't want a long spiel about in qualitative terms. Quantitatively, how much is the benefit here of fewer delays in flight and cancellations?
When we've looked over the last 12 months at the number of cancellations due to flight crew, we see that close to 40% of those could have been saved or not cancelled because we had crew that were in the bases of Hobart, Canberra or Mildura.
40% would be saved by just these 71. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is, when we looked over the last 12 months at the number of flights that were cancelled due to flight crew or cabin crew not being available, we had crew that were available in those other bases, and had they have been in the major bases where we will move from April next year, we would have been able to save those cancellations.
So that is explicitly because of that 71. You'll have a 40% reduction in cancellations and delays.
It's not a 40% reduction in overall days because, as I said, cancellations and delays occur for a number of different reasons. When we look at those
I'm trying to come back to my question with all respect. I want the figure for just the 71 because, as I said, I can't understand why you wouldn't have done that analysis. Given the decision before somebody here is what the benefits of that is.
Chair, as I've explained, when we look at our cancellations, there's a number of different reasons.
Okay, well, look, we're not getting anywhere here.
Can I just ask a follow-up on this, Chair?
Yeah.
So the question is, of your cancellations and delays, what proportion of all your cancellation and delays are as a result of flight crew availability?
I can
versus Air Services Australia, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, I can take that on notice.
Because
but
that is the number, 40% of that number.
And maybe Captain Colley.
That is absolutely correct. So we have a number of reasons for cancellations: mechanical, weather, air services, flight crew and cabin crew delays are in the lower.
This is a critical number. So I'm sure there's someone behind you or someone watching back at base in Sydney that could text you the number over the next 45 minutes. That would just be in your monthly reports, I'm sure. Please.
Senator McKenzie, we can take that absolutely on notice.
I don't want you to take it on notice. I want you to give me the number, because I know that number is reported on. Is it something that Ms Hudson would expect to see, that sort of level of data? How many of the cancellation delays are as a result of Air Services Australia, mechanical problems, weather, flight crew availability? That would be a metric you are collecting daily.
Yeah, we are.
So you're not taking it on notice. You're going to give it to the committee today because somebody who is listening will give it to you.
As I said, Senator McKenzie, we absolutely look at the reasons for cancellations and delays. There are a number of different reasons for that.
Yes, I know that. I'm asking
the
for
reasons, flight
percentage in the last quarter. Why don't we make it easy for you? In the last quarter of your Qantas's cancellations and delays, I want to know how many flights were cancelled or delayed as a result of flight crew availability?
Sure, we'll take that.
Do you want to continue? I might. Well, look. So we've got another hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a reasonable
There's
request from
lots of
Senator
time to
McKenzie.
get
Perhaps
that
somebody
number.
within QantasLink could get that. Would you like the call, Senator McKenzie? Because I was finished. No, I'm finished. I'm rotating. I'll go to you.
I wanted to understand the metrics that you used to make this decision, and I asked the TWU whether they'd seen anything from you. I asked pilots and the staff the same question. So what data did you use to make the claims that it would improve operating efficiency and reliability?
And resilience.
And resilience. Thank you.
So I will start and explain again the process, and then I'm going to ask Captain Colley
the data
to...
sets that you used.
So as I said, the important piece of what we do is look at our schedules and all of our flight and cabin crew rules, and we put that into an optimiser, and we look at where do the patterns start and originate from. 85 to 90% of those.
Please don't repeat your evidence.
Yes.
Okay.
So
if you've already answered the question and you don't have anything else to add, I'm very happy for you to say so.
Senator McKenzie, what is important to understand,
so
and I'll ask
schedules.
Captain Colley to also talk about the different base ranks as well, which is also a big contributor to how we also looked at this decision.
So specifically on the point of resilience in some of the smaller bases, if we look at Hobart, for example, which we've spoken about this morning, there is 15 cabin crew and 17 pilots. Of those crew, we have annual leave lines, we have people on days off, we have people on sick leave, we have people flying, and then there's reserve coverage left over. We have a number of flights into and out of these ports. With that limited reserve coverage, you won't necessarily have a captain, a first officer, a cabin supervisor and a flight attendant to cover all of those flights throughout the day.
But Miss Yangon said before that you were looking at recruiting up to 350 more pilots and cabin crew. Wouldn't you be able to fill some of those new jobs in the Hobart base to be able to, we're talking Hobart in particular, any of these other bases, couldn't you use some of those numbers to...
It's a really great question, and our training, so we are going to 29 aircraft. Our training capacity and pipeline is absolutely at full capacity at the moment. What we see to serve and operate to the 62 ports and 102 routes that we serve regional Australia with, we need to have those crew to give the best operational resilience for the overall network, putting our crew into those main bases where we have the majority of our flying originating out of, and what Ms Ngoyan spoke about in terms of how we build those pairings, we can provide more resilience by having reserve coverage in captain rank, first officer rank, cabin supervisor, flight attendants across the entirety of the day. So that is how we actually provide that operational resilience. We can recover those flights. When you look at where flights originate out of, because there's a good discussion around this, yes, you might have an aircraft overnighting in Mildura, overnighting in Hobart, but in terms of where they originate out in those patterns can better serve all of our regional destinations by having those crew in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. And that is what we are doing in terms of our recruitment, is putting those people into those bases that can best serve the overall network.
Oh, yeah, sure. In your submission, you talk about Qantas Group spending $1 billion every year with regional suppliers, winemakers, farmers and food producers. Can I understand the direct contribution of Qantas Group into Mildura, Hobart and Canberra?
Senator McKenzie, I'd start by saying our schedules themselves. So we have 250 services a week going into Hobart, and actually recently we've added new services, Hobart Perth, Hobart Canberra and Hobart Newcastle.
So 250 into Hobart, how many into Canberra?
We have about 440 per week into Canberra.
And Mildura?
56 into Mildura.
Okay. My question was around direct financial contributions. So, yes, you're flying. Yeah. I want to understand, we've talked about the social impact of families having to move, of health professionals having to leave these communities as a result of partnering with your employees under the conditions you've set for them. I want to understand the financial contribution, the economic contribution Qantas Group makes to both of those 3 regional bases.
Those services support significant amount of economic contribution just by those services going in there, supporting businesses, medical, education. But in addition, if we go to Hobart, we have a call centre there that also supports our Qantas call centres, and we've continued to grow that. We have a lounge network. We're investing in our lounge down in Hobart. In Canberra, we have our QantasLink engineering facility. We have a large airports team. We have a number of lounges there, and we continue to support, Canberra in a range of different services. We've been putting the A220 on a number of our routes out of Canberra. So our contribution is significant.
But you can't quantify your direct purchasing power or the economic contribution that Qantas Group makes to those 3 regional bases.
I'd have to take that on notice in terms of
I would
that
like you
direct,
to do that, because we have had a lot of evidence from community members and businesses about their concern that the closure of these regional bases will have social and economic impacts, and I want to understand if you know what your economic impact is in these places.
We absolutely, and I want to reiterate that this decision on the base changes has no impact on the services that we
I've made that
putting
point.
in. And actually, the fleet renewal that we have underway and that this will continue to support is actually going to help us continue to look at ways that we can grow our frequencies and our services.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Across
that.
more than
so
just
I now
these.
want to move to the 70 employees, and I want to understand how many are expected to relocate, how many are expected to commute, and how many are going to exit the airline industry.
Absolutely.
I have that data for you, and I'd just like...
Excellent. Let's go, Captain. There's a long list of senators with questions.
I'd just like to add that at the outset, we have jobs for all of the impacted employees.
No, we understand.
And we are finding ways for those employees that want to stay in their communities to do so. So if I start with Mildura, there were a total... I know we've talked about 6...
Relocate, commute or exit the airline industry. You've got 70 here, so let's
So starting with Mildura, we've got 5 captains. There were no post office in that base. All 5 of those captains are going to commute. They will remain living in Mildura for a minimum of 2 years, and then we will continue to support what they might want to do after that period. We've worked with each individual. The 3 cabin crew members in Mildura.
Sorry, captains, can I'm happy if we just go to...
Broader?
Just the 3 categories.
The reason I've separated Mildura, Senator Mackenzie, is that is the Dash 8 turboprop operation, and it's quite unique. I'm happy to talk about broader. So just with the 3 cabin crew members in Mildura, one was already in the process to go to Qantas long haul. She will continue to live in Mildura. One was in the process of relocating to Ballarat, but now will go to Adelaide, supported by us, and 1 will commute. So of the 8 employees in Mildura, 7 will continue to reside in Mildura and commute or for either Qantas Mainline or ourselves. The 5 pilots will remain. Of the crew impacted in terms of the 220 operation, so as you know, we've got 30 cabin crew members, 15 in Hobart, 15 in Canberra. We have 17 pilots in Hobart, and we have 16 in Canberra. What we know so far from those bases that we will have for the pilots, we've got 13 that we've chosen to relocate. As I said, we put choices on the table.
Yes, understand.
So 13 will relocate, 23 will commute, and 2 are unsure and are still working through. We have said we would like to know their preference and how we support them by the end of the year.
Okay, so you've covered 40-odd?
That's 38. So of the tech crew, so 13 to relocate, 23 to commute, 2 are unsure at the moment.
Yes.
With the cabin crew, we've got 10 that have chosen to relocate. We have got 3 that are going to commute. Most importantly, we have 13 cabin crew in the 220 operation. that have gone through a process with Qantas Long Haul and are going to choose to transfer employment to Qantas Long Haul. And that was something that I believe Terry O'Toole spoke about this morning. So those 13 will continue to reside for the most part in their home base and work for Qantas Mainline. The reason for that is, as Terry O'Toole pointed out too, is that that long haul arrangement and the rosters support those families probably being home a little bit more. So that was a welcome opportunity.
So does that add up to 70?
Just getting there. There are 4 cabin crew members that are unsure, and there are 3 cabin crew members that are going to leave the business, and we are supporting them with a separation payment. So that will get you to the 71 total. So 33 cabin crew, 38 flight crew will get you there to 71.
Captain, respectfully, that may be what they're indicating to you now. It doesn't mean they're happy about it, and it doesn't mean that they'll necessarily be there in 2 years' time, correct?
Look, no one wants to shut a base, Senator Whish-Wilson, and what we are doing here is providing. No, look,
you want to shut a base
in front of us because you want to shut the bases.
What we are trying to do is provide operational resilience to all of the regional
which we
network.
can't define.
So
we can't define the operational resilience.
We absolutely can. And I think,
Okay,
Senator,
so has anybody texted you
Senator,
what percentage of cancellations and delays across the Qantas Group are as a result of flight crew
we have that. We have that on. Someone is working on it as we speak.
Okay,
Senator
great.
McKenzie.
Thank you.
But I do want to come back, Senator. We understand that the impact was and is significant for all 71 of our people, and we have worked really hard with them, with their unions and their representatives, to find arrangements that are supportive and individualised and personal as well. And I think this is a very difficult decision. I'm not disputing that for 1 minute. But we absolutely, as I said in my opening statement, we are looking at how we continue to support the 62 towns across Australia, the 3,500 flights that we operate per week, and setting ourselves up for success now as we go through this big fleet transition and renewal is really important to get it right.
Could I just say something quickly, Chair? So you've said you're supporting your staff. I'd like to read you something, and this is why I initiated this inquiry today. And this is from a really good mate of mine. Yeah. He wrote to me some time ago and said, when I was forcibly moved by Qantas to relocate in 2021 from Perth, obviously during COVID, it ended up in a personal breakdown. I ended up in a Brisbane hospital. I had no support from Qantas to assist to moving to another business unit. Qantas were unsupportive, uncaring, and I left after 17 years with an unblemished, diligent and successful flying career at Qantas without a simple thank you. I ended up needing significant counselling to allow me to function again and to return from the sorrow and depression I found myself in. This led to significant panic and anxiety attacks whenever I saw a plane in the sky. How stupid, hey? How could someone who's flown Seahawk helicopters off the back of RAN frigates, been in command of a Qantas 717 aircraft, now feel sick at seeing a plane in the sky? Pete, it was very real. It was in my head and I needed help. And he said, mostly importantly, he said there's a lot of other staff, and especially pilots, who are feeling very similar things after COVID, after what happened in COVID, which was a difficult time for everyone, understandably, and now they're being put through a similar situation where they have to leave where their families are and where their communities are, because you're making a financial decision so you can make more money. Don't you have any sympathy for these people?
Senator, I absolutely understand the impact of this on these people, and I don't for one, neither Nick, myself, take that for granted for 1 minute. We acknowledge that this has impact on them and their families, and that is why we have spent a lot of time with them, with their representatives, working on ways to make this work so that they can continue to live in their communities if that's what they wish. And throughout this, we had some principles that we were going to allow our people to have choice. We wanted to take individual circumstances into account. And the consultation period that we went through was incredibly helpful for us because it allowed us to design these packages in a way that we haven't done before.
Would it be fair to say you're doing it different this time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Versus what happened during COVID and around COVID?
Yeah,
okay.
And I think if you were to ask any of our people, they would tell you that differently, and that's certainly what we've heard.
Can I just add, as part of the consultation, and you have heard from various representatives today, that was something we took very seriously, and we did listen to the feedback from our people, how we tailor options. There are a number of things that through that 3-week period that we took on board to be able to tailor and understand individual circumstances, and that is ongoing. And I think one of the biggest things that I would talk to is the commuting rosters and what that looks like. Now, the commuting will start from April. We know that we will need to make changes and adapt. So we've set up a committee that will look at the rosters on a quarterly period. If we need to do that more regularly, we'll do so. So I think one of the biggest things about commuting is, yes, we'll pay for your flights. Yes, we'll give you an allowance to do so. But how do we keep people living in Hobart, Canberra or Mildura? From my view, as an operating crew member as well, I think the rosters are a really important part. We've invested in that to make sure we can build rosters that support that. So part of that consultation and working with all the unions and the various representatives is what we're aiming on to focus and to tailor to make this different. And I think we did hear this morning that yeah, there are things we've done differently, and that's based on the feedback we've had. We want to work with every single individual. There are 71 individuals impacted in different ways.
Last question for me, Chair. I mean, I just wanted to raise this point while we were talking about this issue of staff morale. It sounds like you are going through a lot to try and accommodate your staff. Wouldn't it have just been easier to keep these bases open? Are you making that much money out of closing that it's worth going through all this for Qantas?
Senator, this is what I'd say. This decision wasn't about cost savings, profitability. It was about setting us up for success as we go through this massive fleet transition and renewal. As an airline, we have to have our crew based where the flying originates. 85 to 90% of that flying, from a crew pattern perspective, starts in those bases. And having our crew there means that when we have weather or engineering or any of those factors...
Sorry, Ms Yangon, so it's your new aircraft, it's your new aircraft purchases, your fleet renewal, as you say, that's behind this?
That is one, but it's even today, even with our 8-9 aircraft that we have right now today, 85% of those patterns are coming from those major bases. That will increase more as the aircraft come through, and that's why it was important for us to do this. As we've now got to a point where all of our for the 220, these were all previously 717 operating crew. They're now all trained on the 220, and we're starting the recruitment of new people to come in as we grow that fleet further. This is
that's not your reason for doing it, but how much have you costed it at?
Well, Senator, what we've actually done, because we've designed these comprehensive support packages, we're reinvesting it back into the support packages that we have on offer.
Okay, so you'll be able to quantify it for me. How much?
Well, we haven't finalised all the decisions of people, so I don't have that.
How much have you budgeted for?
Well, we haven't, because it will be whatever our people come to us and their decisions.
You wouldn't want to be running Treasury.
Well, there's a combination of options that have different financials. So
give me the range.
Give
me the range that you've set aside in your budget that you'll either have an underspend of, or you will end up meeting the budgeted amount.
As I said, I don't. This is not a cost-saving decision. It's an operational decision.
That's fine. If it's not, let's say I accept everything you're saying on face value. How much does it cost?
How much does it cost?
If it's not saving you money, how much is it costing you to make this change?
Well, until we have our final numbers through, I won't know that number. So I'm happy to take that on notice.
So you will have had to do a projection on this. There is no way you would have signed off on it without somebody putting some numbers in front of you. How your patterns will change, what it'll do to cancellation and delays, how much is it going to cost. You're not running a milk bar, you're running a highly complex aviation business. I would like to know how much this will cost you or how much this will save you.
As I said, Senator, this is not a business case in the traditional sense. This is not
So you
us.
don't know?
No, what I was saying we know that...
Do you know or don't you know?
We know that there is productivity that will be... benefits that will come by having our crew in these major bases.
I would like to have a number.
Okay.
I'm getting a lot of words.
Yep.
You're not You're not somebody that is inexperienced. You are also somebody that knows their way around a budget, knows their way around a spreadsheet. Please.
I can tell you, Senator.
What is the financial impact, negatively or positively, for Qantas Group in shutting the regional bases of Hobart, Canberra and Mildura?
So what I can tell you is that projected forward, when we had all 29 aircraft, the productivity benefits would be less than 3 million. But that number will be all reinvested back in the packages, and that's what
That's
I don't know what that
I
is
just
at
want to
this
know
point in
that you've
time.
actually done some work around the financial impact.
Of course, but as I said, the main impact was not about the numbers. It was about showing
I'm not going
us
to
that we
intent.
had...
I'm not going to intent.
So what I might do, Ms Yangayan, this is a detailed question. Could you take that on notice for us, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Senator Liga, I'll go to next.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for coming along today. I think more importantly, thanks to the Qantas staff. I think for people like myself and Peter in regional areas, we have very, very limited competition, and we have quite a distaste in our mouth from this whole process. And I think it's the Qantas staff who are so friendly and so lovely when we hop on the plane or when we come in the airport that are helping to make this sit a little easier. But when it comes to your management, Ms Yangoyan, how many of your managers and how recently have managers been giving assurances to staff that Hobart was safe, or Mildura or Canberra?
Yes, so Senator, I appreciate that as we started the 220 operation about 2 years ago, there's been a period of time for these crew that has been somewhat, not uncertain because they knew the aircraft were coming, but the 717 we had to retire. The 220 was coming in, so a number of them have remained employed.
But people's
without...
lives are being stuffed.
Absolutely.
Like from this here, and people made life decisions. Home loans, mortgages, partners relocating. I mean, the TWU have said that 88% of crew partners are going to have their careers, their long service leave, their annual leave. That's going to be stuffed as well out of this whole process. It's not just... Yeah, please continue. Sorry,
I'll come back to that. Nobody is being forced to leave these bases. So, in fact, they can continue to stay in their communities, and the community support package that we have in place means that they do not have to be uprooted and have those implications.
I understand that, but what's the average day like for... At the moment, we heard evidence that that an average staff member in Hobart can be at the base within 15 minutes and ready for work. What's for somebody who commutes, what's their day look like?
Look, I think what's important there is when we're looking at the commuting rosters, we've already spoken about how that will look like, how we allocate reserve ahead of time for people in these bases, so we can actually accommodate that. At the moment, the standard call-out period for reserve is 2 hours, and that's across the board. But as I said, more importantly, how we support these people is if they want to live in Hobart, Canberra or Mildura, how do we build rosters, including provisions for reserve, and block time away to actually support that. So I think we're actually, and for some individuals in Hobart, we've already, for example, extended the commuting beyond 2 years because we understand their circumstances, caring arrangements. So we have worked with each individual, and we will continue to do that. We understand that some partners cannot leave their jobs or be relocated or interrupt their benefits. So that's exactly what we are doing, working with every single individual, because we know that one size doesn't fit all. So we're absolutely taking on board every single individual's circumstances and how we can best accommodate and support them.
I'm just struggling to understand this decision to close these bases. Like you are going through an entire process where you are ripping up regional communities, and you're taking these bases and uprooting people's lives to Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, where I just am absolutely struggling to understand what the absolute point is of this.
Senator, as I said, the point of this is being able to support ongoing services to all of regional Australia. as said, we operate to 62 towns, 102 routes across our network. We are going through our largest fleet renewal that we have had. As we do that, we have to make sure we have crew in the right places to support those networks and enable us to grow it further.
But in fairness, like you have been operating these routes for decades, you know, this is not it's not new.
But we are getting 20 more of these new aircraft. We will have 29 of them. That is going to be further growth. That is to support regional Australia further. We have to. I've talked in my opening statement about the challenges of regional aviation. I know this committee will hear more on that. Those challenges are real. We have to set ourselves up in a way that we can support these services viably into the future.
Could I ask? Okay, so it seems like the aircraft are a big part of this decision as to why it's happened. We've had it. I've heard evidence, and committees heard evidence that even you weren't aware, or had told staff in Hobart that you weren't aware of the base closure even months before it was announced. I'm interested in the review process that's led to this. When you started looking at the purchase of these aircraft some time ago. Was it always the plan to close the regional bases going back many years?
No, we started this review in about February of this year. So we, as said, if we go back when we first were getting these aircraft, our big priority was around how we would get everyone who we currently had trained in the bases that they were at. And we wanted to provide the ability for the crew that we currently have their choice of base. We acknowledged that it had been some time between when the 717 and the A220 came in where they were employed but no work, and so we wanted to give them base of choice. But when we make those decisions, we never put guarantees into these things.
When were you aware that the Hobart, Canberra and Mildura base was going to close?
Captain Colley will go through
you're
that.
You're the CEO.
In February,
I'd like to know when you were aware of this.
started to do the work, and I became aware of it a few months after that.
Was that February?
Yeah.
So February 2025?
Yeah, of this year, yeah.
Okay. And so just going back to my original question, would it be fair to say then that when you were looking at purchasing these new aircraft, you hadn't anticipated that you would need to seek these productivity benefits or this improved resilience around this acquisition of capital, these aircraft? Is that fair?
No, Senator.
Has this caught you by surprise?
Senator, what I'd say is that we are always looking at demand, where we're going to best place our aircraft and our services to meet demand in the markets. And so that is something that's ongoing. And in many ways...
But you're going through an awful lot of trouble for this process. You're going through packages, you're re-rostering staff, you're putting them in hotels here, you're taking them away, even for the people who are going to be commuting and everything. They're going to be away from their families for longer. Like, you're pinching from Peter to pay Paul. Like, I just am absolutely gobsmacked.
It's really important that we set ourselves up for success. And coming back to
Hobart can't give you success, like having a base, or Mildura, or
before,
Canberra.
Senator, 85 to 90% of those patterns originate in those major bases.
Isn't having happy and productive staff part of your success, or setting yourself up for success? Don't you agree that that's a fair assertion? Like, these people are deeply unhappy and frustrated.
We have jobs for all of our people. We want our people to stay connected with us, and that is why we are absolutely looking at ways to do things differently. And I think the context here, just to be really clear, we have 62 ports for regional Australia, and we have what we're moving to 6 bases. We are overall trying to provide that operational resilience. We don't have bases in all of our various outports for that reason, so that we can better serve the overall network. I think that context is really important.
Still not addressing about whether these people are going to be happy and productive being forced.
We will continue to work with every single
over 2
individual.
years. You're going to, yes.
A minimum of 2 years.
Minimum of 2 years. Can you guarantee us that you'll extend that?
We've said to all of our people we're going to work with them individually. That is our commitment to them, and we will make sure that happens.
Your commitment we've heard you were committing to them being able to live in Hobart only a few months before you weren't.
Like
So
we've heard
why would we put any
I think
trust
the
in your
context is very important there. It is very important. So with the NJS pilots, we did offer them to move to a base of their choice and to take a command in their base of choice. Now, that was based on the fact that we were expecting a ramp up in recruitment. Now, when we commenced the review in February 25, an accelerated 220 delivery profile, what that is showing to us where the base is and where the flying comes out of. So we understand that, and we understand that people made those decisions, which is, again, why we are supporting our people, why we are doing things differently here, because we understand that some people simply cannot move. So we understand that, and I think that's been a critical part of the work that we've done, is to understand how we support these people, because we do recognise that people made decisions. We do recognise we will be recruiting for an ongoing period of time. That's a minimum of 24 months going forward. So again, we are looking to support every single individual. We've gone through the figures of those that want to relocate. The majority of the people want to commute. We've said, how do we support that commuting? What does that look like? That is where our focus is. We do want happy people. We want engaged people. That's what we're aiming to do, and that's why we're taking the time to go through every individual circumstances. We've spoken to family members. We've spoken to the actual employees, and we absolutely understand every circumstance is different.
Do you, as part of that, the valuing and supporting the people, do you believe that people in regional areas, like those employed through NJS, should be paid the same as mainland workers?
Senator, it's really important that we have agreements in place with our people that are aligned to the aircraft and the networks that they operate.
Or
these
dodgy
agreements,
shell companies that people might also refer to?
These are agreements that have been in place for a number of years that we've come to collective agreement on with our unions.
I'm just really
important.
sorry. I just feel like there's a certain amount of gaslighting of workers that's going on right now. Like, it seems like that you're making a decision, and all I can see, and from my perspective, and I don't know how other senators feel, it seems like there must be some dollar factor that's driving this here, because it just does not seem to make sense.
Senator, I just want to reiterate, our commitment is to all of regional Australia, and what we are trying to do is have a network and services that will be viable into the future. It's important we start to talk about some of the challenges that exist for regional Australia. There are reasons why the aviation sector has had challenges in regional parts of Australia.
But you've also, the Qantas in particular has received an enormous amount of taxpayer support, and I believe your before-tax profits was over $2 billion last year. I understand there's struggles, but but you're still doing pretty well. I would think most punters would think Qantas is doing pretty well. And don't get me wrong, we want to see Qantas survive, but we want regional Australia to thrive.
Absolutely. But our network is made up of different things.
For regional Australians.
Sorry.
Anyway, have we got that number on the cancellations and delays yet?
Look, I do have a number, Senator Mackenzie, and what I would say, though, is obviously we'd like to I'll give you the number. We'd like to take this on notice to go and do some further work on the number, if that's all right.
So it's 40% of what?
Of 18% overall. So crew cancellations is 18%.
Right,
now,
got it.
What I would say to that, in a crew breakdown, that doesn't just mean a shortage of a cabin crew member or a flight crew member. This might be due to crew sickness. This might be due to crew rest. So if I could please take it on notice, we could take it on notice so we can give some more detail to that figure.
But it's 40% of that 18%,
that is correct.
just to get to that original thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Pocock.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Just sort of listening in, I'm interested if you'd made this decision prior to your consultation process.
No, Senator, we certainly had a hypothesis that it was going to provide resilience and ultimately better the network. But consultation was a very important part of this process because we learnt a lot about the impact to our people, and that was really, really important to help design packages that were going to be reflective of their needs. So, no, the decision wasn't made, but yes, did we have a hypothesis that we needed to do this for the strength and resilience of our network? Yes.
When did Qantas come up with that hypothesis?
So we started consultation in September, 10th of September.
No, but you said you had a hypothesis beforehand. How long had you been sitting on that hypothesis?
So the team, as I said, from February of this year, the team had started to do work on what our future network and future flying would
Wasn't
look
that
like.
the consultation from February? No.
No.
No, so we announced the base review on the 10th of September this year, and there was a 3-week period of consultation. So the announcement...
Pocock's question was when you made the decision. Like his
there
question
was-
wasn't about when the review started.
Absolutely. So we did work from a period of February 25 up to the 10th of September when we communicated we were doing a review. The hypothesis was generated close to the 10th of September when we had done all that work in terms of our recruitment profile, our network and what that looks like over the period of time. So that's when the consultation kicked off. So the hypothesis was reached a few days or weeks just before that in terms of once we'd completed that work.
Okay. You said that $3 million of savings a year. Is that the first 2 years where you have additional costs, or is that into the future? Do those uptick significantly?
Into the future, yeah. And this is where, in terms of where everybody lands, there'll obviously be cost up front, and that'll depend on the decisions that people make.
You're saying that a lot of people want to commute. I've had multiple staff say that the relocation packages offered are insufficient, particularly moving to more expensive capital cities. What do you respond to that?
Look, what I would say to that was a very useful part of the consultation. So not only are we providing what is provided under the industrial agreement, we have provided a lump sum figure of $36,000 and $36,400. There is other things that came up in consultation, including looking at salary sacrifice in some of the costs of removal. So that was, again, something that came throughout the consultation period.
So, sorry, I think my question was, given all that, you've come up with the figure. I'm hearing from staff that it's still just not enough, relocating from, Hobart, Canberra, Mildura to a capital city.
And Senator, what we've done with that, some people have different relocation needs, different amounts of belongings, etc. And we have been working with individuals, so we will continue to work with individuals to make sure that we can minimise any impact if they choose to relocate. So we have taken a tailored approach.
If they can negotiate higher than that, or what should I tell people who contact me?
I think what we are doing is saying we'd like to work with every single individual because we know that the circumstances are slightly different. We have offered an allowance, we've offered a relocation package, but again, we know that people's dates will change. We know that people have different things to relocate, different size families. So what we are saying is that we are working with every single individual to understand their circumstances.
Moving to Canberra, the Canberra-Sydney leg has extraordinarily high cancellation rates. And you just have to talk to any Canberran who travels, and the number of times you're on the morning flight and you just get bumped, and you're on the very full flight all of a sudden, and the excuses always are Sydney or weather or something. I'm just interested, why is there such? I think the latest one is 6.7% cancellations. I think your long-term average is 2.2%. Why are we seeing this?
Yeah. So, Senator, I want to acknowledge that the cancellations on Sydney-Canberra haven't been where we needed them to be, and I know
for a long time now.
Particularly in June and July of this year, in particular, they spiked. The predominant reasons are weather, engineering and air congestion into Sydney, which impacts the broader network because of the high frequencies that we have on Sydney-Canberra. We are doing a lot of work, particularly around our fleet health, and the fleet transition is a big part of how we get that better in itself. But there are a range of factors. As I said, the high nature of frequencies, particularly in how many of those services are touching Sydney, means that then if there's congestion or holding into Sydney, these flights get impacted. Sure. And maybe, Nick, Captain Colley, you want to go through that?
Keep you to respond though. I assume the other airlines are flying in the same weather and the same airport. So how do you
They
explain?
don't have nearly as much frequency as what we do, and
they're
so
still
maybe
flying. They're still flying to Sydney Airport though.
But they don't have as much frequency that's then coming back, and it's probably important that Captain Colley explains some of this.
Your frequency, I think, is a real bugbear for Canberrans because it looks like there's a lot of frequency, but you're often cancelling flights to sort of double up flights, it seems. And so I just don't understand why Canberrans should cop this excuse that it's the weather, it's Sydney Airport, when other airlines seem to be able to do the same thing, fly through the same weather, and not cancel as much.
And I think quite often with the frequency that we offer, if you do delay some of those flights, a lot of our customers will transfer to the airlift, but they'll transfer flights anyway. So I think what we find is because of that frequency, we can quite often get our passengers to Sydney through the consolidation. If we did delay a flight, it will actually mean that we've got some flights that are simply not getting our passengers to Sydney as quickly as possible.
So it's a benefit for us?
Look, what I'd say is we balance that.
Like
we balance that.
Doesn't feel like it.
No, we know that we need to get it better, and we're committed to. And pleasing that it is getting better. We have seen improvements on the cancellation rate. I checked this morning for the months to date. I think we're running about 4.5%. So it is getting better. But again, coming back to, we have significantly, almost double, and I'll take on notice. The frequency versus our competitors. And as I said, those flights, those aircraft, they come back, or they've maybe come out of a regional port into Sydney to go into Canberra, which is why they get affected by all of that holding and the congestion that can occur in those peak periods in Sydney. It is a challenge, and we need to get better on it. And as well, I'll be honest that our engineering and fleet health has to get better, which is part of this fleet transition that we're doing as well.
It's also a business model, though, to be fair.
So there is more work for us to do,
Sure.
And we're committed to getting that better.
I've obviously enjoyed this status as the national carrier, and I think it's well known that you are sort of very generously used by the public service. I think it's around $200 million a year across the Qantas group in government expenditure annually. Don't you think you should have a Qantas Link base in the national capital, given that?
Senator Pocock, I think what is most important as a national carrier is that we can continue to serve all of regional Australia viably into the future. And being able to do that productively is what's important, because that's what's going to keep these services viable and sustainable into the future. And that's our commitment. And that's what, we feel really passionate about wanting to continue to support.
Sure. I guess my concern with that answer is that it seems like Qantas Link are the only ones who think not having pilots and cabin crew at these regional bases will actually improve your service. Canberra Airport has warned in its submission that, and I'll quote, "There is the increased risk of unreasonable disruptions to services. If Qantas Link cannot ensure provisions of pilots and crew, this will likely result in cancellations." Again, as one of the most frequently cancelled routes in the country, what assurances can you give Canberrans that this won't just get worse?
This decision on base changes will not make the cancellations worse. There are other things that we need to work on, as I explained before, to continue to improve the performance on Sydney and Canberra, and we're working on those. But this decision does not impact that and will not make it worse. This decision, as I said, was about resilience, reliability and supporting the customer network we have across all of regional Australia.
And how does Qantas Link define resilience?
Yeah, it's about having the right crew in the right ranks and levels and reserve coverage on any given day to be able to manage disruptions. And again, maybe Captain Colley, you want to talk that through again, but that's what resilience is being able to recover in disruption, whatever that disruption may be.
I guess my understanding of resilience would be that you have resilience in actually spreading out where people are coming from. And we've heard from employees of yours who say, if you're living in Canberra or Hobart or Mildura and you get a call, you can literally get changed and be at the airport ready to go. If you're in a hurry, half an hour, an hour. If you're coming from Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, what does that mean? So I don't think we're talking about the same resilience here.
I think we touched on it.
Sounds like a bit of a buzzword.
A little bit earlier. So when you've got 15 cabin crew and 16 pilots in Canberra, depending if they're captains or first officers, and in the cabin crew world, if they're a cabin supervisor or a flight attendant. With those small numbers in a base, you can't necessarily cover the full day or the range of flights, because you need, for example, a first officer in the morning to cover and in the afternoon or middle of the day. So what we're saying is, in the bigger bases, by having the crew in the bigger bases, you can actually cover all of those ranks, a captain rank, a first officer rank, a cabin supervisor and a flight attendant, across the whole day, which services the 62 ports and 102 routes. So it gives you better resilience and capability overall to fly the network. As Ms Yangoyan said, more than 85% of our flying touches those main bases, so it does give us the ability to recover. I do recognise that maybe there's a 15-minute call-out, but having that exact person that's the right rank at the right time is not guaranteed, and is a lot harder in the smaller bases. Just because we need a captain at 6:45 doesn't mean they're going to be here in smaller bases, and that's what we see. So when we talk about resilience, that is what the larger bases and the expanded reserve coverage does give us.
And that's what supports the 53-odd ports today that we serve that don't have a base. That's the norm. Yeah. And you know, as said, having them in those major bases means that they can get out and they can serve those bases. And, you know, there's a number of different factors that we look at when we have a disruption of sort. Sometimes it's consolidating customers, reaccommodating them on other services. There's a range of different levers that we're going to use to be able to help manage our customers get where they need to as quickly as possible in the event that we have disruption. As I said, that's what we do over the.
I guess for communities in these regional centres, capital cities as well, it's pretty hard to cop given how Qantas treats us. You know, the cost of flying in and out of places like Canberra, just extraordinary. And then we look at your profits, eye-watering profits, and then we look at your service, like clearly going downhill, like not the sort of
eye-watering taxpayer
pride
money invested.
Pride of Australia. So I guess this is, I think, partly why this committee is having to look at it, because
We're just shaking our heads. I can't imagine what average punters are thinking right now.
What I don't, in relation to Senator Pocock's questions, what I don't understand is why we're hearing from so many people like yourselves who've been working in airlines for a long time, who are giving us the exact opposite. So Senator Pocock mentioned we've heard from Hobart-based crew, pilots and crew, and from the unions that, you know, crew illness during duty or overnight will require crew to be flown in, which could lead to significant delays or cancellations. You won't have that reserve capacity or that reserve coverage. And I'm particularly interested as a Tasmanian living in the north, in Launceston. I've heard from, you've probably heard me say this today already, I've heard from staff in Launceston that say, whether it's an engineer, if there's a problem with the plane, or with other crew, there's other feeder bases there that Hobart crew also fill. So kind of, we're an island. It's a little bit different. How are you going to convince us that not having people on the ground with the reserve coverage is somehow going to increase your resilience?
So I'll say one thing about the engineering. We do have engineering capability in Hobart.
Is that through Jetstar?
That's through Jetstar, so that does provide the resilience. What I would say is that we operate our Q400 into Launceston, Devonport and Burnie, so we wouldn't have that. We can't interchange the 220 crew, so that resilience. So we ensure, so the way we operate to Launceston, Devonport and Burnie is the model that we do overall. So that's, as I say, we do that from the Melbourne base to service that and have the reserve coverage there.
Look, a couple of specific questions for you. Once again, I'm sure you've heard me ask these this morning, so I do want to put it to you. Obviously, you've made statements previously that pilots and cabin crew don't tend to get sick on overnights at outports. I think it might have been you that said that, Nick. And Civil Aviation Safety Regulation 62.270 requires all operating crew to be fit for duty. Is the base closure intended to circumvent this regulation by discouraging illness or fatigue at output?
I can categorically say no.
Okay.
Being a crew member myself, the fitness to fly is the absolutely starting point for all of our crew, and that is an obligation on the company and on the employees. So we respect fitness to fly. We encourage it. We have a number of committees how we report and ensure our crew are fit to fly. So that's paramount. All
right. So you've been categorical about that. So had previous crew sickness, for example, in Hobart, been highlighted as a reason to close the base?
No.
No. Okay. With rostering, it's also been put to me that the perceived lack of resilience that you're relying on to rationalise your base closures occurred in Hobart in recent months largely because of underutilisation of Hobart crews. Do you accept that?
What I would say to that, at the moment we do have a very high training environment, but what I would say is that, as Ms Yangoyan said earlier, the pairings and where that flying naturally originates out of, that is what we're seeing at the moment. So we are looking to build pairings where we bring people in, but as I said, the work that we've done and how we best support the network is through those major bases that allows us to service all of our 62 ports.
So, yeah, it was put to me that pilot and cabin crew have had long periods of reserve in Hobart for several months who have been willing and able to work, while several crews from other bases overnight in Hobart.
There is an element around min rest, which I think came up earlier as well, in terms of some of the complexity in the rostering rules and the fatigue rules, which are underpinned by the regulations in terms of min rest in a home base. And there's good reason for that, that we touched on this morning around in your home base you have to drive to and from the airport, whereas when you're on a overnight provided by the company, we'll put you in a taxi, provide sustenance, etc. So there are differences in the rules.
You've obviously rostered it this way, but could it have been utilised more efficiently?
We will always try and utilise our crew as efficiently as we can through the optimising how we build those pairings, but we do rely on where that flying naturally generates and flies out of. So sometimes, yes, certain bases and ranks will be underutilised depending on how we best utilise our crew across the bases and build those pairings.
And Senator, that example of overnights, you're right, it's often not the Hobart-based crew who are doing the overnights because the pairings or patterns are built in such a way that it may start in Melbourne, they overnight after 3 or 4 sectors into Hobart and then do the first flight out in the morning. And that's partly as well their roster rules. The rules around your roster and your fatigue are different in your home base to your output base. And again, that comes back to the schedule and us being able to fit the patterns with the schedule and the times that we want to operate.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I also understand the Hobart base has maintained a high level of resilience when properly staffed over the last 10 years. So how can you explain how the previous management of the Hobart base was successful and why the current management practices seem to have issues?
It was a very different network with the 717 Senator.
So it comes back to the aircraft again?
Yeah, and the type of flying that we were doing. So the 220 is a much more capable aircraft. It's a newer aircraft, modern. We want to utilise this aircraft and enable it to do the things that we've bought it for. And so this is, again, part of us.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
So just a couple of more specific questions. Is there currently an application to operate with reduced cabin crew numbers in the event of illness? Have you got an application before CASA?
No, you can't. No. I mean, there's regulatory requirements on the minimum crew numbers, which we must meet.
So there's not an application to operate with reduced cabin crews numbers in the event of illness?
Apologies, we do in the 220 world, we operate with 3 cabin crew members. In the event that a cabin crew member does go ill, we can operate back with 2 cabin crew members, provided the PAX numbers are under 100. That is a regulatory. So that there's no changes to the regulation.
But you're not applying to have that changed.
It's not changing the regulations. It's operating within the current limits of a 1 to 50 ratio.
Will all cabin crew be trained to operate as cabin supervisors going forward? And if not, how will that affect resilience?
There are no plans to train everyone as a cabin supervisor. That is a distinct rank. However, in the day of operations, we can have people step up. So we train all of our crew to the highest standard, and there are opportunities for people to step up. We do have a separate cabin supervisor category.
How often have staff in Hobart, pilots or cabin crew or engineers, had to go to Launceston to provide coverage?
In terms of flight and cabin crew, that doesn't
none at
happen.
all, because it's
in terms of engineering, we do, and I'll take it on notice in terms of what that looks like. But
the A220 crew can't operate the Q400. They're different.
That's right.
Different crew sets.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about the higher costs of servicing remote or rural and regional areas with the turboprops. So Launceston seems to use the Dash 8 a lot. I don't know how often. If I always assumed it because it was lower cost, because it takes a lot longer and it's more inconvenient for us as consumers. I just assume you guys did it because it was lower cost. Is that correct? What you said earlier about these turboprops being a much higher
It's
cost?
definitely it's definitely lower cost than, say, a 737 into Launceston. The point we're making is that the overall costs of operating into regional markets where you have much smaller base of customers means that the costs of operating on economies per scale are a lot higher, and some of these costs, like airport charges, the costs particularly of the turboprop fleets around engineering and maintenance, regional fuel costs, they are higher, and that's why on a per seat basis you see that they are significantly higher than domestic or international operations. And that is largely as well, it should reiterate, why we made the decision around retiring our Q200 and Q300 aircraft. One of the challenges that the regional aviation sector has is that many of the turboprop fleets are ageing. There is only one turboprop fleet that is in new production, the ATR. Everything else is midlife. And so it's one of these challenges that regional aviation has to deal with.
Just a few more questions for me, Chair. Interestingly, you mentioned Air New Zealand as a comparison, that they're having problems with higher cost access to their regional areas. My understanding is they're 51% owned by the New Zealand government. Is that correct?
I believe
but
that's
they have a community service obligation to...
I don't know those details, Senator. I have to take that on notice. But I think the point is that they operate a Q300 aircraft into their regional network, and they're having significant challenges with it. And as I said, in the UK, there's a couple of very contemporary examples with Blue Islands and Eastern Airways as well that are just demonstrating some of the challenges that regional operators globally are having.
You said earlier, Rachel, that there wouldn't, to Senator Pocock in relation to Canberra, there wouldn't be any more cancellations than there is now, or wouldn't get worse.
Well,
I don't know, so I'm not trying to verbally, I can't remember exactly what you said.
The decision on base changes will not impact cancellation.
Can you say the same thing for Hobart and Tasmania?
Yes.
You're prepared to say that 100% now and stake your reputation on it?
Base changes are not going to impact cancellation on time performance.
What about delays?
There are other factors that will always be impacting delays and cancellations.
I'm very aware of those factors.
Yeah, those are the things that, again, we are really committed to continue to work on. So what I'm saying to you is this decision around base changes won't impact delays and cancellations.
Just two questions for me then. Senator Delago mentioned that you've received a large amount of public funding, taxpayer dollars, $2.7 billion, I think. Interested if Qantas has a quantification of how much taxpayer money you've received over the years. Would Qantas management consider reversing this decision, or are you 100% locked in to close these bases?
I'm confident that this base decision is setting us up for future growth.
Sorry,
new aircraft.
are you locked in to the decision, or will you overturn it?
This decision is locked in. We will always, into the future, though, be looking at our network and what our base establishments are. That is an operational, business as usual process that we're going to go through, because things do change in this industry. Demand changes, where we fly the aircraft changes, so things in the future may change. But right now, I can tell you that on the network and the schedules that we are going to operate, we've made this decision, and as difficult it is for the 71 people that we are absolutely supporting, this is the right decision for regional Australia.
Just a statement, but I would hope that you do reverse the decision. Certainly, I know Senator Delega and I, we don't want to lose 30 well-paid workers in our state and their families in a couple of years' time if they have to relocate. I don't think we can really afford to do that as a state. It might not sound like a large number to you, but it is to a community like Hobart, and I just hope that if you don't, then at least going back to my mate who sent that message to me that began this whole process, that you do, that he was worried about the impact on other staff and workers, that you do look after these people and that you make sure every single one of them is...
Absolutely, we'll commit to that, Senator Wishful, and I'm happy to take his details. We will support all of that.
No, he's not with Qantas anymore. No, that's... No. Yeah.
Can I just ask who you refer to patterns or
yeah, patterns, pairings.
Patterns, pairings.
Yeah, same thing, yeah.
Are they is that an interchangeable term? Patterns and pairings. Is there a difference between a pattern and a pairing?
The pairing is the crew that's built to fly,
to fly the pattern.
To fly the pattern, correct? Yes.
Right. Okay. I need the pairs to get my pattern done. Right. Who sets those patterns? Is that just spat out of the optimisation tool?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But obviously there's a lot of inputs that go into that.
Yes, appreciate that. I appreciate that. Right. I'll have a think about that. I'll probably have to see you again next year. But in terms of rank and number of crew, is that all regulated per aircraft, or is that part of your industrial relations system internally?
So every aircraft requires a captain and a first officer, and some of our international aircraft we operate with other crew depending on the length of that. So for the operation we're talking about...
But is that something you can determine, or is that regulated from outside?
Regulated, so yes. So the manufacturer of the aircraft requires a captain and a first officer, and then we have rules around cabin crew, so that's regulated.
And how are those rules determined?
That's the regulator.
From manager?
So
that's also
the regulator
regulated?
and the manufacturer. So for the 220 aircraft, it requires a minimum of 3 crew because, of course, we have 137 passengers. You need 3. What we were talking about...
I'm just trying to understand decision, what control you have over the decisions you have to make.
If we operate the aircraft, we need to operate with the manufacturer and the regulators compliant with both of those.
Right. So there's nothing within your industrial relations regime internally that impacts pairs and patterns?
I'm not sure what the question is, because for us to operate the aircraft, we need to roster it with 2 pilots.
The rostering arrangements, I assume, are part of your industrial relations.
They are, yes.
Does that...
we can't circumvent the regulations.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But it is the rostering that's impacted by your conditions contained within your... I'm assuming
there are certain additional rostering rules, etc., in the enterprise agreements, but what we can't steer away from is that to operate this aircraft...
I get that. I've parked that.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand what discretion you have around crewing ranks and numbers and availability. I wanted to just understand the cross-subsidisation of the regional routes. We heard... Yeah, last question. Okay. We've had some evidence around regional routes needing to be cross-subsidised within a business, and I'd just like you to outline how Qantas Group handles pricing your regional routes.
Yeah. So pricing is based on 2 factors, demand and supply. Supply really comes to the cost of operating, and I've sort of spoken about that. Those are airport charges.
Do you calculate your ticket price per route, or because Qantas is required to fly certain places, is sometimes the only provider, etc., etc. There's a whole lot of decisions around that you have to cross-subsidise between routes, or do you determine the ticket price on the route information itself?
Senator, I think you're asking two different questions. The way we determine pricing, I can talk you through that versus...
I do understand supply and demand. Thank you so much. What I'm trying to understand is internally, do you price it only according to the route itself's information, destination, or do you use a whole of group?
We use dynamic
approach.
Pricing like other airlines, which that will be determined.
I understand dynamic
Yeah.
pricing, but again, we heard evidence today that regional routes are cross-subsidised. Does that happen in Qantas?
So what I can say is that our regional routes don't perform as well as our domestic or international routes. Now, in some cases, on a route-by-route basis, there will be some routes that at times are break-even or even loss-making. We try to avoid that wherever possible, and sometimes we do have to make difficult decisions on schedules or routes. But we acknowledge, again, the important role we play in serving regional Australia.
But that isn't my question, and you know that. My question is, do you determine the ticket price based on those localised factors of supply and demand and cost of operation for a particular route, or is there cross-subsidisation from some of the more profitable routes that you run across the business?
We do not determine pricing, cross-subsidise other routes. Pricing is determined based on our fare ladders, which come back to supply and demand.
On the specific route?
On the specific route.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Senator Sterle, you've been waiting patiently, and now I'll go to Senator Lane.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms Yangoyan and Captain Colley. I have had some interaction with Qantas over the years in previous life, but on a brighter note, and I absolutely, it's going to sound strange, I absolutely admire that you I don't admire you made the decision, but I admire you don't want to lose people out of the business. That's great. I also understand that you're under different leadership now than that unfortunate era that we went through with the former CEO, the spineless chair and the sycophantic board, but you don't need to comment on that. But I have great faith in the chairman now who is at your helm because of my past experiences when he was at Toll and Brambles. So doing all this negotiations, and the unions aren't happy, but you've said that you want to work through and you want to do the best for your people, and we're only talking 71 people. We heard stories from Miss O'Toole earlier on, some of her people, the grandmother who wanted to connect to country and her daughter and granddaughter, then the other employee you got that's looking after elderly parents. So if they can't, for whatever reason personally, locate, why wouldn't you entertain redundancies?
So, Senator Steele, what we'd say is we have jobs for everyone.
I understand.
But for our cabin crew, we actually have said that if...
Yeah, but you're also... Sorry,
people,
sorry, I'm not going to cut you off because I don't want to hear all the same Qantas spiel. All right?
We do have a relocation... Sorry. We have a package available for our cabin crew.
I heard of this, Minyango, and I'm not going to... Yeah. I don't want to hear all the Qantas spiel. I've just asked you a simple question. For people's lives, that you have made a corporate decision for the reasons that you explained to this committee, right, wrong or indifferent. And I have negotiated redundancies with Qantas when they were a damn good company under James Strong and Jeff, and I can't think of Jeff's name, isn't it? I still reckon he invented SARS and the other stuff. But anyway, because every time we wanted to do an EBA, something came up with Qantas internationally. So I ask you once again, we have done this with Qantas when Qantas was a good company, and I'm hoping Qantas will go back to being a good company again, but I've still got that stain from the Joyce era. Why wouldn't you entertain that for people's lives you've tipped upside down?
Separation payments for our cabin crew.
Oh, don't worry about it. I've wasted my time. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, my faith in Qantas is starting to wane again with the people further down the chain. So I don't embarrass myself and be rude because the Chair has said in the opening statement that we deal with each other with respect. I'll stop right there.
I'm sorry, Senator,
Thanks,
but the separation payment is actually more generous than the redundancy payment.
Just offer them the redundancy.
Senator Sterle will let Ms Yangoyan respond, and then we'll go to another senator.
No, now, sorry.
We'll let her respond. Okay, you're welcome to respond, Ms Yangoyan.
apologies, Senator. As said, we want all of our people to stay with us. I understand that some may not want to, and so there is a separation payment that is available. It is more generous than a redundancy payment, but obviously
For every single
cabin crew.
one?
The pilots haven't come and asked that of us.
Okay. Right. So let's just
Yep.
Okay, so the separation payment, which Ms O'Toole said was more attractive than redundancy for her members. But obviously if there were some pilots in regional areas who have been living there for 30 years or whatever, 40 years, that separation, is that available to them? And if it is, it's not as attractive as the redundancy.
If they were to come and have a conversation with us individually, we would absolutely work with them on what that might look like.
That's all I want to hear. Thank you very much. You got
Senator
it.
Lagan.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, for people in Hobart, for example, who choose to commute as part of the new arrangements, how much time per roster period will they lose spending with their family?
Look, I think the key thing here is the commuting roster. What we're looking to do, and we've spoken with the various unions
Could
about
you take
this,
that on notice, Captain, to find out for me how much time they will lose with their family compared to the current arrangements?
Happy to take it on notice.
Thank you. Finally, could you also on notice for the committee give us some data for the last couple of years of the flights in and out of Tasmania's 4 airports? Because we're going to be following this for a little while. I'm told by Senator McKenzie we're going to be this committee. So if we could have a look at the flights from the weekly flights from the 4 Tasmanian airports. I don't know if other senators would like other airports, but yeah, for the last couple of years, so we can start having a look at that. Thank you.
Just a couple of quick clarification points, and please, you can take these on notice too. In terms of providing the full packages, the full details of packages to crews in a timely manner, some questions I put to an earlier witness. In relation to commuting, whether support will be provided in the event that flights are delayed and cancelled, what reserve conditions apply, and whether rostering of single RDOs will be forbidden. Don't have to answer those now, but if you could take those on notice. And could you just clarify the two cabin crew policy? Is that, Nick, is that currently in your crew manual?
It's in the process. I believe it's either in the manual now or in the process of being updated. But just to clarify on that process, you cannot depart a main port. So this is a recovery mechanism only. This is not an operating method that we could roster. So this is for recovery only. Correct. Absolutely it is. So you could not go through a main base and then continue to operate with 2 cabin crew. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Senator McKenzie.
Yes, so thanks to my wonderful staff back at my home base. So according to BITRA data, little over 64,000 Qantas flights were cancelled and delayed in 2024, of which 4,612, that's the 18% due to crew reasons, and 40% of that number is what these 70 staff changes will save. So, as we went back to our earlier maths, 18% of your cancellation and delay data are due to flight crew availability. That was your evidence. And to answer my questions, 40% of those cancelled and delayed flights due to flight crew availability, 40% of those were due to these 3 bases. That was your evidence.
I think we do need to qualify that and take that on notice, because there's a few different figures that have come through, and I would like the opportunity.
And that's why I qualified it as BITRA data 2024.
And I would like the opportunity to scrutinise that and come back with a position on that.
Because I want to understand in a very clear way, with quantitative data, that these 70 people, their partners, their children's lives being turned upside down, and I appreciate all the supports around it, but lives turned upside down, I want to know to save how many flights of cancellation delays, given the metrics you gave me. And then I would like you to give me what making sure those cancellation and delays that won't are projected not to occur under these changes, how much that will cost you or how much that will save you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Look, I just had a quick question. I don't think it's been clarified. I just want to clarify that before there was some evidence about the nightly rate, that's a weekly rate or something that's been provided. So if someone does want to choose to commute out of a home base, how much are they given to help offset the costs of staying in their non-principal home of residence?
So the allowance is a $700 allowance per fortnight as a commuting arrangement.
$700 per fortnight.
Oof.
How much is a hotel?
But yes, I mean, that obviously, how did you set that rate? That to me doesn't seem like it would
I think
barely get them
as I came back to, with the commuting
Couple of
rosters,
nights
we're
in
trying to
Melbourne.
minimise people's time out of base. So we're trying to, the rostering and the commuting rosters is the bit where we will add the most value to make sure we maximise people's time at home. If there are nights they do need to spend in a fortnight, so that is what that allowance is aimed at, and whether they choose that for meals or for accommodation, what that might be. As I said, what we will do is have a quarterly review with these rosters and what's working and not working. This is not something we're going to set and forget. We've committed to working as an ongoing
That seems to me
review.
something that could be worked on. I mean, why not just set a nightly rate? So are you suggesting, I don't understand how this works, but could they only spend perhaps 2 nights or what in that place in a fortnight because they
Correct.
then go from elsewhere? Okay, but why cap it? Why not link it to what nights they have to be
Well,
in
that's
that
what we're going
space?
to do with the rosters. And as Nick said, we are spending a lot of time, we'll be spending a lot of time with them working through the rosters, trying to use late starts, for example, so that they don't have to overnight, call out of reserve early, and doing multi-day patterns to reduce that impact. And that is something that, through the rostering committees and consultations that we'll have, we'll keep working with them. If we can't get the rosters right, we'll keep reviewing this. We acknowledge that it needs to work for our people, and I'm committed to making sure that that happens.
Okay, well, that just might be something. Free advice, I suppose, for the committee. One thing that might be productive out of this is it definitely came up to us from multiple sources that seemed inadequate for them. So, look, thank you very much for your time. There were some questions taken on notice. We're asking for those to come back by Friday, the 5th of December, if that is possible. Look, with that, thank you very much for your time. Have a great weekend. We might see you again.
Thank you.
With that,
Thank you.
I will now just close today's hearing. Thank you again to all the witnesses who have appeared, to Hansard Broadcasting and all the hard-working Secretariat staff. Thank you. Have a Merry Christmas, and the committee stands adjourned.